right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me say Hotep Baragani to my Africana Studies colleagues and contemporaries, and let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I personally have always found goodbyes traumatizing. I said I personally have always found goodbyes traumatizing. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we are located at 8916 South Main Street, and we're worshiping and being hosted by our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, which is pastored by my good friend, the Reverend Dr. Della F. Hollinis. The offering that you are viewing or listening to is a social justice offering entitled It's Time, and we try to concentrate on the economic and the environmental, since that is a 1-2 knockout punch for all of us these days. And we trust that you will keep the suffering of the poor in mind, especially at this time. We thank God that Sister Mayor Carrie Bass was able to procure another $300 million for her project to help the homeless. She's wanted to get, I think, 17,000 homeless off the streets by the end of her first term, and we are trusting in God that she will be able to accomplish that. Thank God for her looking out for the poor. Most people talk about it, but she actually is being about it. Which brings me to my first observation. On PBS, they have a YouTube special that they are showing about a city called Leisure World, which is down in Orange County. And it was originally Leisure World, but they have changed their name to Laguna Woods. Laguna Woods Village. And what was remarkable to me about that presentation was everybody in there was white, and in order to get in Leisure World you had to be over 52, and Leslie, the commentator, Leslie Stalls, I think is her name, she was just going on and on about how these people were, some of them living into their 90s and to their hundreds, and I didn't see one black person in all of that milieu that she was just gushing over. And what that says to me is that the same old racism and the same exclusionary policies that have infiltrated, have been a part of all photography, all photographers who are non-black, is still going on. In other words, Ms. Stalls is going to people that look like her and not going to everybody. She's gushing over some of these people living past 100, and I have to say that I thank God I witnessed one of my own members was born in 1912, the year that the Titanic went down, and she lived until 2018. She was 106 years old when she passed away. And her sister, she had a sister who was even older than she, who lived to be 115 years of age. But of course, the black people don't get the photograph and the party that the other folks get. But I thank God that I met Sister Ollie McGarry was such a great soul, and she helped my ministry tremendously in her lifetime, and she was very supportive, and like I said, she lived to be 106 years old, Sister Ollie Lee McGarry. And reason why I mentioned that or bring this up is because of the fact that Leisure Village was founded by a developer named Don Cortese, who was from back east, and he put these leisure worlds all over the country. He has about 7 of them, and in all of them they have a very small representation, if at all, of any black people. And like I said, I know there are black people that are living past 70 and 78 even. And so that is it brings me to the consideration of what was the policy, the housing policy, following the coming out of the Second World War, when men were coming back from the war, and it was a segregated military, and of course the nation was, the military reflected the nation, and so the nation was segregated, the military was segregated, but yet the blacks and the whites had to go and fight for democracy, freedom, and yet when they came back, the government, the United States government, to its shame, had started a program, a policy rather, a practice of redlining, and they had 4 distinct categories. Green, where the white folks live, they got the best race, the best credit, and the best developments. And then you had yellow or gold, which was still good, and then I think you had blue, and then, which was much worse, but then you had the red, and the red was where all of the black people were congregated. And so the banks wouldn't lend to anybody in the red, of course, because they had drawn up those maps for that very purpose, to know where not to lend their money. And so the policy of discriminating against the blacks was very evident and very obvious. It was not, it was very overt, let's put it that way. And the people who were getting the loans, quite naturally, were the people in the first 2 tiers, the green or the yellow, as it were. And there is a DVD out. I have it at the house. I've watched it a few times, and it'll break your heart to see the fact that there was a development, those early developments, called Levittown, Pennsylvania, that was developed by the Levitt brothers, who had developed the ability to do prefab housing. That means a lot of the framing was done off-site, and then when they got there, they were able to construct, as it were, 30 houses a day. And these houses were cheap. They were $8,900, and we're talking the 40s, late 40s, early 50s. But that's when it was the best. That's when the families were, people were getting married and starting their families. And the GIs returning from the war were given the access to the GI Bill. And of course, with the GI Bill and with the Federal Housing Administration at their back, and the VA as well, they were able to get a loan. Because prior to that, you had to have 50% of the house, or the price of the cost of that house, and you had to put down that 50% at the time, and then you had only 5 years. But when the government stepped in, that 5 years became 30 years, which is what we have now. And that by having a 30-year loan, and then having the mortgage insurance underwritten by the federal government, well, quite naturally, the banks and the insurance companies were eager to make loans to these people, although all of these people were white. And so they made loans to the white people, but they would not make loans to the black people. And so consequently, the white people got the benefit of the suburbs with the help of the federal government. But so the whites, they built Levittown 1, they built Levittown 2, and then all over the country they were building these suburbs. But it was a white-only suburbs, because it said in the deed of contract that in the event of you wanted to sell this house, you would have to sell it to another Caucasian, that you would not sell it to a Negro. And that's what they call restrictive covenant. Started the redlining policy began in 1934 with the drawing up of these maps, and then by the time of the end of the Second World War in 1945, and the issuance forth of all of these veterans then who were looking to start families, well, the government said, come on, a veteran, we're going to help you get started with your family. We're going to give you a low cost loan, and the monthly note was cheaper than the monthly rent. The monthly rent was $100, $125, but you could buy a house and you don't have to pay $58 a month. We're talking way back yonder now. And so that is what happened, and that is why when you hear about places like Leisure World, well, you got to remember, these are the same people that got the big break from the government. Way back there, starting in 1934, or even before that, where they got preference. Dr. Ira Katz Nelson has a book talks about when affirmative action was white. Well, affirmative action was white. If you were white, you could get a low cost government loan to buy this $8,000 house. I remember up until the end of 1951, these houses came with appliances. You had a GE refrigerator, you had a GE stove, and you had a Bendix dishwasher. And who wouldn't want to have a break like that? And so I'm saying is that the inequities that you always hear me talking about were very apparent in this discrimination against the black families, and the invitation to come on in to the white families. And keep in mind, there were black families that had money too, but they didn't have access to the FHA and the VHA because FHA and the VA loans because by law, by the government policy, the banks could not loan to Negroes, as they were called at that time, colored people. We didn't begin this black thing until the 60s, late 60s, after 68 really. And this inequity that even Lyndon Baines Johnson talked about in his address at the commencement address that he gave to the students at Howard University. It demonstrated how that some people were given a leg up, where other people were being repressed and pushed away. And the people who were in Congress were in favor of this type of policy, especially Rankin and Bilbo and Stennis and all of that ilk. And they were on the committees chairman of the committees by this time, and they made sure that only the white people were getting these loans. Only the white people were having access to the advantage of getting these low-cost VHA and VA loans. And so that's why the white people today have the suburbs, and most of the black people, us black people, originally we were only given the public housing. Well, really both of it was public housing, but the suburbs public housing was with dignified and respectable. But the public housing that we were forced into, of course, was not respectable and not dignified. And it was an embarrassment and a shame, and it was a step backwards. And when you found millions of poor shoved into these hastily erected public housing projects, that's what they were, projects. And you got to try to raise your family in that type of situation. And so that is a blight on the story of America, and you can't hide that. Those that don't want to teach history, this is what they're trying to avoid addressing. The Bible says, "Wash you, make you clean. Put away the evil of your doing from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Plead for the widow." And I find out how that applies to our government, even to today. Because keep in mind that those housing patterns that were established back then are still having their effect as I make this broadcast, because those housing patterns were set along with the housing pattern. That's where your schools were located. That's where your stores were located. That's where your libraries were located. That's where your transportation highways were built. And please don't start on the transportation and the highways, because it looks like what they call urban renewal was really Negro removal, because all they did was move Negroes, put the highways through the places where the Negroes had, where the black people rather had their homes, or where they had their businesses, just like they did through Greenwood, Oklahoma. After they rebuilt from the 1923 or 1921, as you may have it, massacre, Tulsa massacre, then later on, here comes the National Highway Project and bulldoze all of that business again and move those people out, push them away. Somebody said urban renewal it was really Negro removal. And so the people lost everything that they had built, because a lot of times the government in the early days would not give you sufficient funds to do your relocation or to find another place to live. And so that policy, that original policy, started back in 1934 with the redlining that gave the white people the suburbs, but only gave the black people the projects. Is still in effect, and its consequences. That's what I'm looking for. The consequences of those early practices and policies, remind you, that was sponsored by the federal government, are still yielding bitter fruit to this very hour. Remember, Lyndon B. Johnson in '68 signed the Fair Housing Bill, which he was able to get through subsequent to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, that he was able to move the hearts of some of those hard-hearted people to at least do something to honor Dr. King. And so that's how he got the Fair Housing Act, which before was the Federal Housing Administration. But even then, after the Federal Fair Housing Act was passed, we still had the same people. I'm talking about the real estate people and the agents and the brokers and the bankers were still in position. And so what did they do? Where before they had blocked the black people from getting a loan, now they said, come on in, we'll give you a loan, but it's going to be a what? A double loan. We gave the good loans to the white folks, but now if you want to come in, you're going to have to go by the dictates of whatever terms we set up. And so your interest rate was onerous, your down payment was onerous, and your monthly note was onerous, and it got so bad in places like Chicago and New York, and even out here on the West Coast, they did what they call contract binding. That means you're paying for the house, but you're not, and you got to keep up the repairs on the house, and you're paying for the house, but you're not accruing any record of equity in the house. You're just paying, and which was the same as renting, but they were making you keep up the property. Anything go wrong, you had to fix it. And the man who owned the house, and to whom you were paying, he may not reimburse you for what you had to do. You know how it is when you get a leak in the faucet in the bathroom or the kitchen or wherever it may be, and you tell the landlord, he keep telling you, well, I'm going to get in there and fix it, I'm going to put it up. But finally, you have to actually do it yourself if you're going to get it done. And hope that the landlord will, once you give him the receipts from the repairs or the plumbing or whatever it is. And remember, in an apartment or in a house, everything can go wrong. What happens if the roof starts leaking? What happens if a window gets broken? Or something serious. Something always happening when you try to own a home. And so all of these inequities were pushed off onto the black home buyer, the black customer. That's, in other words, after all of the record of slavery, after all the record of Jim Crow following the golden years of the Reconstruction, and separate but equal and all of that, now that they allowed you to get a loan, the loan is no longer at 1%, the loan is at 5% or 10%. Or something more onerous, when the original loan to the original people, they were able to get a loan for $10. You hear me? And really no money down. And things of that nature that make it advantageous for you to get into the house. And so those are factors that affect us even to this very hour. Why? Because now houses, those same houses that they sold for $8,900 are worth $500,000 and above. They're selling houses over in the millions. These same little workaday houses, I call them, because the house I live in is just a working class house on a working class street. But that house is worth $500,000. Now the white people who originally bought those houses, they had equity built up in those houses. So their grandchildren and children and grandchildren got the benefit. They were able to go to college and pay for their own houses and stuff like that. Because they had equity built up in that house. That's what Dr. Sandy Darity and Dr. Derek Hammond call wealth. That's what it is. All right, how many minutes? All right. That's what you call wealth. Wealth is not your paycheck. Wealth is what you got after everything is paid off, and you put it all in a pile, and that's where your wealth is. And most people's wealth is in their houses. Don't forget that when the housing crash of 2007 happened, a lot of black people lost all of their housing. All the equity that they had built up was wiped out, and they lost the house. And we have never recovered from that. We may smile and ride around in a Mercedes-Benz, all that kind of stuff, wear rings on our fingers, but we're hurting because we never recovered from that 2000 recession. And housing prices in California at least have gone through the roof, really going into the stratosphere. As far as you trying to buy a house. Now, when I came out here, I was able to look forward to the day where I can buy this house, and I can look forward to the day where I will have paid off this house. And by the grace of God and reasonable portion of health and strength, my wife and I was able to accomplish that. We paid off our house, the house that we bought. But most people, especially young people, I don't believe they're going to be able to pay these houses off, because with even an entry-level house, if it's at $500,000 and over this way, it's closer to $1 million. And what job you going to get that can pay you $1 million in 30 years so you can pay that house off? And on top of, with all of the uncertainties that are there, your health, sickness, injuries, other bills and expenses that come, it is a great gamble for people to get in a house now. And I wanted to touch, as I close, on the fact of that God said, look after the widows. And I used to drive past that, but you know, when a woman gets married, she gives up a whole lot, takes a big chance. They're not taking that big chance now as they did, but it used to be that a woman was subsumed behind her husband. Her husband was the one who owned the property. His name was on all of the bills, and his name was on all the deeds, and the bank wouldn't even deal with her. And so when her husband died, or if her husband divorced her, well, now the book said widows. So if the husband died, then, and this woman was dependent on her husband, now she's in a very bad position. And that is why the Bible says, look out for the widows, because their breadwinner is gone, their support is gone, and they're getting older. They can't go back out and catch another man. Some don't have no experience at working and all this type of thing. And so you have to take all of that into consideration. Said all of that to say that be kind to the first ladies of our churches, and be kind to the former first ladies of our churches, all right? And remember, if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, take my advice, don't waste your life, don't waste your career. If they don't want to pay you, if they don't want to give you what you're worth, don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We're out of here.